Hey everyone, my name is Sean, and in today's video, we're going to be playing a Phantasm Spiral deck. Normally in my videos, I like to do a full deck breakdown, explain to you how the deck works, and then give you the deck profile, so if you want to play it yourself, you get that whole explanation and you understand how to play it too, and then you can try out do your own versions of the build, and then I'll show you some gameplay at the end. But today we're going to be flipping the script, and I'm going to give you the gameplay first, because this match I should say, was a very, very long duel. And I feel like throughout the duel, you're going to see most of the key cards anyway. So this will cover the explanation part and the breakdown of the deck as we go along. So I'll be doing that simultaneously. At the end of the video, I'm not going to be giving you one deck profile, but two. I'm going to give you the deck profile that was used in this duel here. But then after this duel, I did some kind of changes, and there were some things that I didn't like about it. And so I will point those out towards the end of the video. So you'll get two profiles as well. So we're playing a Phantasm Spiral deck, and you may be wondering, what on earth is a Phantasm Spiral deck? This deck is an homage to old school Umi based decks and cards like the Legendary Fisherman. Now, we're not going to be playing some of those revival cards or focusing too much on the legacy itself, but we're going to be focusing on one really important field spell and one really important trap card. And I'll tell you what those cards are as we go along. The monster we just summoned to the field is Megalomasha X. It's a level 4 vanilla monster that has 2000 attack and is a dinosaur monster. You're only playing this card for two reasons. One, it's a water monster. Two, it's easy to normal summon. And three, because it can be searched out using Fossil Dig. That's the only reason why. Megalomasha isn't really part of the theme, or is like a key card by its name or anything like that. Our opponent here is playing Shiranuis. It's nice to see someone playing Shiranuis that isn't like just using one or two key cards as zombie decks. They are zombie support, but nobody ever really plays them as a pure version of the deck, and I think that's a shame. Shiranui Solitaire is a really good card. It's a level 3 card that can search out Uni-Zombie, and I think Margin might be playing that here in his deck too. But Shiranuis themselves focus around banishing cards from the graveyard and not reviving cards from the graveyard, which is why they kind of conflict with a lot of generic zombie support cards like Doom King Bowler Roach, Glow Up Bloom, or Necrowell Banshee, I believe she's called. It kind of conflicts with those, so a lot of people choose not to play those the other Shiranui cards. But when playing as a deck as a whole, they're actually really competent and really fun to play. And I think Margin Nightwalker does a really good job of showing how they work. Speaking of which, we've activated our first Phantasm Spiral card, and that is Phantasm Spiral Battle. There isn't too much to this card. A lot of the text is to do with the theme of the card, but all it does really is destroy a card on the field. In order to activate the card, you must have a non-effect monster on the field, so your normal monster fulfills that activation requirement. But other than that, it is just a pop on the field. There's a little bit more to it, but I'll explain to you what it does later on in a moment once we start getting our main engine going. Now, we've just drawn into Pacifis, and Pacifis is the Phantasm City, is another variation of the card Umi. If you know what Umi is, or don't know what Umi is, Umi was a field spell card that was released around the original, early kind of first sets of the game, and it was just a water support card. It gave a little bit 200 attack boost to Aqua, Sea Serpent, and probably some other kind of water monster, and that's all it did. It just gave you 200 attack and defense, and it wasn't really anything remarkable. But the original character that was based around water cards, Mako Tsunami, had cards which had effects that activated specifically when Umi was on the field, and I think one example of that was Tornado Wall, or cards like the Legendary Fisherman, which became unbeatable boss monsters without strong attacks, but it couldn't be targeted or attacked by cards as long as Umi was on the field. And so if you ever see the original version of Yu-Gi-Oh!, the original series, you may know or remember that the way that Yugi beats Mako Tsunami is by destroying Umi and destroying his whole archetype and his whole strategy by getting rid of it. I think he uses the moon to clear out the tide or some bullshit like that. I don't know. The first Yu-Gi-Oh! Series is wacky. But a card like Umi that only gives you 200 attack and defense boost doesn't really do a whole lot in modern times, as you can probably imagine. And so Umi, as the game has progressed forward, has always seen little revisions and new versions of the card have come out. We've had a Legendary Ocean, which was a card that can reduce the levels of your water monsters in your hand, so you could do tribute summons for without cost. or you had a version called Atlantis, which I actually don't remember what it does, but I think that card was also an Umi card. And now we have Pacifis. And Pacifis, the Phantasm City, is a fantastic iteration of Umi and really changes the way War decks can choose to work. That being said, Pacifis' first effect is that you cannot special summon effect monsters during the turn you use either of that card's effects. And so we are relying mostly on playing normal monsters as opposed to playing effect monsters. And that doesn't mean we can't completely use effect monsters if you don't want to, but because it's got such a massive restriction, we're going to be focusing towards that and using non-effect monsters for our deck. And so that's kind of what Pacifist is. Now, after besides this restriction, why are you playing it? Well, I'm going to show you right now. While Pacifist is on the field, anytime your opponent activates an effect and it resolves, you can summon out one Phantasm Spiral token, and that gives you a token monster that is a level 8 worm with 2000 attack and is a water monster. Furthermore, anytime a normal monster is summoned to the field or to your field, you get to then add from your deck to your hand a Phantasm Spiral card, and so you just saw me search out Phantasm Spiral Battle. Now, this is why Pacifist is so good. It gives you a free monster, a free level 8 on the field, and then it searches out trap cards for you. And what's really great about the trap cards you search is that while Umi is on the field, you can activate them from your hand. So they work as instant hand traps. And so you could get something like Phantasm Spiral Battle, which all it does is destroy a card in the field. But the fact that you can activate it from your hand is really good because Umi's on the field, and that's how the Phantasm Spiral cards work. That's not all they do. There are different Phantasm Spiral cards, and there's going to be another one you're going to see me use later on. But first, I now want to talk about another card, and that is Sea Stealth Attack. This is another fantastic card, and it's like just as important as having Pacifist on the field. This card is also really important as well. Sea Stealth Attack, and as you can see, is playing homage to the Legendary Fisherman on the card art, which I love, and it's also got Panther Warrior as well, alluding back to the battle between Joey and Mako during Battle City, which is awesome. Sea Stealth Attack is an amazing card though. What it just did is while Umi's on the field, anytime a level 5 or higher water monster is on the field, it battles an opponent's monster, it will automatically destroy the opponent's monster. And that isn't once per turn. So as long as my card keeps attacking, or if my opponent keeps attacking my monster, it will keep on destroying cards. So it functions as a removal card. Then, Sea Stealth Attack has other effects as well. When the card is activated, you can you can activate one copy of Umi from your graveyard or your hand. So if your opponent destroys your field spell, you can then activate it directly from the graveyard when the trap card is activated. So it is a recovery card or an extender. Finally, it also has a defensive effect as well, and that is while this card is on the field, you can banish one water monster on your field to make it so that your opponent cannot destroy face-up spell and trap cards on the field until the end phase of the turn. Then during the end phase of the turn, the water monster you banished comes back to the field, and then you can do that again during the following turn. And that is why we're playing Megalamasher X, because Megalamasher X is a good card to banish for Sea Stealth Attack, but also triggers the effects of Pacifist as well. And that is really good. Pacifist is a card which works as a defensive card, not a defensive card, well, kind of a defensive card. It works as an extender because it puts a monster on your field. It works as another extender because it gets you trap cards from your deck to your hand, and then the trap cards you get from your deck to your hand are going to work as defensive options and removal options for you. So it does 3 of the different main deck roles all in one. Whereas Sea Stealth Attack works as an extender because it gets you back your field spell from your graveyard and activates it immediately. It then also acts as a defensive card because it protects your cards from being destroyed by banishing one water monster on the field. And then it also works as a removal card because it makes your token that you have on the field be able to destroy any monster on the field by attacking them or going through battle. So both of these cards are insane. They fulfill 3 different roles at once and are really powerful effects. And so that's what the deck all revolves around. This is your ideal board, where you want your token, your pacifist, your sea stealth, and your Megalamasher. Now, some limitations to the deck are that While Pacifis is a field spell card, and there are ways to search out field spell cards, albeit not too many anymore because terraforming is to 1, which is really kind of sad. But Sea Stealth Attack can't really be searched out of your deck. So you need a lot of ways to dig through your deck and get your key cards out so you can set up your board ASAP. And so one card which this deck used to use was Card of Demise, and it's a spell card in the middle of my deck on my hand right now. Card of Demise was a card that said, or is a card that says, you can draw cards from your deck until you have 3 cards in your hand. So you ideally activate this when you have no cards in your hand, so you can draw for free. However, for the rest of the turn, you cannot special summon, and you cannot do battle damage to your opponent, and then during the end phase, you must discard your whole hand. So Card of Demise decks, the way they used to work was that you play Card of Demise, draw a bunch of cards, set them or activate them immediately, so you play a lot of spell and trap cards, and then that way when you come to the end phase, you're ideally not going to discard anything because you've got no cards in your hand and you've put them all on the field. And that's what this kind of was revolving around. However, Card of Demise is limited to 1 now, and so unfortunately we can't really build a deck around just Card of Demise alone. And that's why I'm going to give you 2 deck profiles in this video, because after playing this duel, I realized that Card of Demise wasn't really worth building around, and so instead of building around Card of Demise, I took it out of the deck, and I put some other draw power and some search cards in the deck, so that we can play cards from our hand as well as the field, without having to go through that method, if that makes sense. But Card of Demise is still a really powerful card, and if you ever try to play Card of Demise, the best way to use it is to use it in main phase 2, because you can attack your opponent, do some damage, and then in main phase 2, you can just draw your cards, and it only says you can't do battle damage for the rest of the turn, so you've already done your damage, so that's not really a downside. So that's the way you ideally want to play Demise. But there used to be so many decks that revolved around Demise, and it's a shame that this card is at 1, because Demise was like the power boost that a lot of slower decks needed to compete with a lot of combo decks. Most slow decks don't have tons of starters and tons of extenders. They mostly have just defensive cards, because all their resources are in the main deck and not in the extra deck. So you needed to have ways to get through your deck quicker, but those decks are so slow. And Card of Demise kind of gave you that kind of balance. You can't normal summon for the turn, you can't special summon for the turn, but you do get to draw a lot of cards. So it was kind of fair in my point of view. But unfortunately, Konami decided to hit it to 1, and we're coming with other really good cards for control decks, which in my opinion wasn't a good idea, or I wish they kind of revert that change, because you kind of want to have the option to be able to play whatever deck you want, and Card of Demise was a decent power boost for slower based decks. So, what I'm doing right now is I'm using my token to attack his Shiranui card there. And Shiranuis are really good. How Shiranuis work, I kind of alluded to it earlier, but how they kind of work is when they're in the graveyard, they do a lot of banishing. And they can synchro summon from the graveyard, and they can banish their own cards. And then when their cards are banished, they get better extra effects. So they have cards on the effects in the field mostly, which do something to banish one card in the graveyard, and they have banished effects as well, so that when they are banished, I'm saying banished so many times, when they're banished, they also do further effects and build up their engine. So when it looks like you've kind of beaten them, their effects in the graveyard are going to still help them play, and that's kind of what's happening right now. I've just used the card Phantasm Spiral Power. This is another really good that's good for Phantasm Spirals, because this card is a lot like Infinite Impermanence, where you can play it from your hand to negate a monster effect on the field, but it also reduces the attack of that monster by 1000. So Pacifis is really good. You can use this effect to search out a card removal through Phantasm Spiral Battle to pop a card on the field, or you can get a negate using Phantasm Spiral Power. There are some other Phantasm Spiral cards, and the way the deck was designed to be run revolves around a normal monster called Phantasm Spiral Dragon, and it has its own win condition where it does something like equips 3 spell cards to it, and then if you attack 3 monsters that your opponent controls, you then immediately win the duel. All that stuff though is way too slow and too clunky in my opinion. It's better just to pick out the best cards of it and play it like this in my opinion. And Battle is really good, and Power are really good, and those are your main searchers for what you want to use with Pacifist. The only thing I found as well with this deck is that with another reason why I don't like Card of Demise in this deck anymore is because Card of Demise helped you get to the cards that you normally can't search, like C Stealth Attack, but it also things like Macro Cosmos we play, Dimensional Fissure we play Skill Drain obviously because we're playing lots of normal monsters. So having draw card power like Card of Demise really helped you dig through your deck to get to those cards faster. But without Card of Demise being at 3, you kind of can't dig through your deck as quick as you usually could. So how I ended up playing this is more as relying on search power rather than draw power, because I would rather search out my resources and have everything in my deck to be searchable rather than have to rely on drawing them. And so that's what I kind of changed. I took a lot of like the unsearchable cards out of the deck and put more searchable cards in, even though they're not like as powerful as Skill Drain or Macrocosmos or D-Fisher, because those cards are very powerful, but they're also really, really slow in this format, in my opinion. So my opponent attacks my monster, and I'm also going to use Phantasm Spiral power. What's happening here, if I can remember correctly, is I think he had a way to destroy my token using Sunsaga's effect. So I wanted to negate it as well, because I think what was going to happen is that it protects its monsters from being destroyed by battle or card effects. So the battle would have gone through, and my token would have been destroyed regardless. So I decided to negate his monster effect as well, using Spiral power to reduce his attack. But we had a lot of control of this board. We were on our way to winning, and this duel realistically should have ended at least 4 turns ago. But my opponent managed to draw into Soul Absorption. And Soul Absorption with a deck that relies to banish cards is really, really powerful. Soul Absorption is a continuous spell card that gives you 500 attack life points every time you banish a card. And Shurinumis love banishing cards. So he went from like 2300 attack, and he's already on 3800. And because you're gaining life points so much, it almost becomes a defensive card, because you can kind of buy yourself time to rebuild your board. And as you can see, that's exactly what my opponent's doing right here. And he's able to get a lot of monsters out. Now, it's now worth mentioning one other thing that's great about Phantasm Spiral cards. The Phantasm Spiral trap cards are not once per turn. You can use them as many times as you want to. So if you have them in your hand, it's not like a lot of decks where you can say, like Magical Musketeers for example, where you can only activate one of each card in your turn. So you want a variety of different cards to do so, to be able to maximize how many effects you can activate in a turn. You could just use multiple copies of battle, multiple copies of power during your turn, and not have to worry about things like that. So that's really, really good. The other thing which I found though when testing this deck is that I was going through my trap cards really, really quickly. Originally, I was playing just 3 copies of battle and 1 copy of power, but I realized I was searching so much with this deck that I really needed more copies of my deck as well. And that's kind of why I turned this deck away from being a draw-based deck into a searching-based deck, and I will show you that build towards the end of the video. Now, one thing this deck doesn't do too well, it can do, but it kind of isn't too good at, is destroying backrow. So playing against decks which have lots of spell and trap cards as well, ironically, because you're also doing the same thing, it can be a little bit difficult for this deck. So you kind of want to use your cards wisely, and sometimes you have to really decide, do you use battle to destroy a big monster on the field that's bigger than your monsters, or do you use battle to destroy their back row? And it depends on the situation you're in. I don't think there's like a real right or wrong answer, but you're just going to have to try your best to do so. Now, your level 4 unfortunately doesn't get the benefit of C Stealth Attack to destroy your opponent's monsters, so I was hoping to banishing it here, but I was unable to banish it. I think I'm not too sure why I couldn't banish it in this situation. Maybe I did it too late. I'm not too sure, but that was the plan here. But Megalamasha is now gone. And that's another thing with this deck, is this version of the deck didn't really play many extenders. So once your free level 4 monsters are gone, you kind of start to run out of steam very quickly. So I wanted to add more ways to add this deck to grind. So I have more normal monsters in this deck rather than just 3 copies of them. But they're not water monsters though, there's something else. They change it up a bit. I already used a Megalamasha this turn, that's why the other one got destroyed. I see, I understand. Now, while your Phantasm Spiral cards aren't once per turn, it should also be noted that C Stealth Attack is also not once per turn. So the effect that destroys cards on the field can be used multiple times in the same chain, and that is going to be a little bit relevant in this matchup here. That is kind of why I really want to show you this duel, because this duel showcases so much of this deck and what it can do. So my opponent is using his Shiranui effect of Shiranui Samurai. It is just a quick effect banish and increases his attack, but it's really just there to trigger your effects whenever he wants to. And he banished Solitaire, and then when Solitaire is banished, he is gonna special summon a zombie monster from his banish pile with 0 defense, and out comes his Spectral Sword. And I think his Spectral Sword is his main tuner for the deck, so it's gonna allow him to do synchro summons. And this is what this deck is all about. It's all about revolving from your graveyard to your banish to the field. I really would love to try playing Shiranuis. I think they have really a lot of potential here, and I want to kind of understand what the deck is weak about and what it's not really too good at doing. My opponent keeps on getting life points, and this is kind of worrying for me. It's why we don't play a card like Upstart Goblin in a control or stun deck like this, because every time your opponent gets life points, it's like another turn they've given themselves, and he's getting a lot of life points very quickly. So we're attacking one of his monsters. I want to get rid of that quick effect trigger, so I'm trying to destroy his Samurai. And unfortunately, Sunsaga has the effect where if a zombie monster would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can banish a card from your graveyard instead, which is great because then he triggers his effect as well. It's really good protection. I think it's actually a really underrated card. I'm really impressed with how well Margin Nightwalker played this deck. And then of course Soul Absorption is on the field, and that's going to give him more cards to use and more life points, which is just making this game harder and harder. He's now back to 7300, and I'm like, oh, I'm now losing here. And unfortunately, because his card wasn't destroyed, not Megalamasher, but my token is now gone, and so I've lost one of my main forms of removal. And that's what this that's how this deck works. That is also the weakness of this deck. Once your pieces start to get broken, your cards combined are a little bit less effective. So without the token on the field, we no longer have our removal via C Stealth Attack because our other monster doesn't trigger it. But it is what it is. If my opponent activates an effect, then we can get another token to the field. So it's not too bad if you lose your token, but you kind of obviously don't want it to happen. So he banished one of his cards, he didn't activate the effect, and so we're going to end our battle phase here and we're going to pass. Now another card we played in this deck is called Into the Void. It's just a draw one card, but it combines really well with Card of Demise, because you do Into the Void requires you to have 3 cards in your hand to activate, and then you get to draw one, but then during the end phase you discard your hand. And Card of Demise kind of works really well with that card, because Card of Demise will draw 3, and then Into the Void can draw 1. You do whatever, set cards from your hand to the field, and then during your end phase both of them will trigger, and then you don't discard anything. So I kind of want to use those cards, but at the same time I have 3 copies of C Stealth Attack, and when you're playing a Card of Demise deck, you have to be careful with what cards you set to the field, because if you have continuous cards and they don't leave the field, the more cards you draw, the higher the chances are that you're going to have to discard them, because you won't have anywhere to put them on the field. My opponent then summons out Aroma Seraphy, do I say? Yeah, Aroma Seraphy, Sweet Marjoram. And this is a card that basically anytime he gains life points, he can destroy a card on the field. I'm like, nope, you are not having that card. So we play Solemn Judgment to that, because you need to protect your board. You need your monsters on the field to let them go, or your spell track cards on the field to have this deck work really, really well. And so we don't want that card on the field. And so in this deck, we're playing counter trap cards like Solemn Judgment, but then we also had a card that I used earlier in the game called Fists of the Unrivaled Tenyi. And that card is an Omni Negate if you control a non-effect monster on the field. And so, yeah, you kind of really, want to protect your board from being destroyed. But what I really like about this type of stun deck, as compared to a lot of other stun decks, say like Gravekeepers, as I did earlier on in this channel, is C Stealth Attack doesn't have to always protect your board. If it fails to protect your board, it then gets you more field spell cards, which is something that the Gravekeeper cards didn't do. There's Hidden Temple of Necro Valley, which kind of does something similar to this card, where it can activate Necro Valley from your hand or graveyard, but it doesn't protect the card as well like Sea Stealth Attack does. So you do need to use other cards to protect your Necro Valley, whereas this card does it all in one, saving space in your deck and making it more efficient. Use the card effect so we get back our token, and then welcome back to our Phantasm Spiral card, and then we're going to do another search because we summon a noone monster to our field, and there's no real point to chain here. We could banish our Megalamasher, but our back row cards aren't in threat right now. There is a reason to banish Megalamasher though, because his attack has been reduced, so it can be good to banish it as well, just to get his attack back to normal when it comes to the end phase. But right now there's no point doing that. So we add another copy of Battle, and yeah, this is what I was finding out. Like, as we grind, I'm running out of Phantasm Spiral cards to draw and search out. So yeah, I kind of really wanted to make this deck a little bit faster, and rather than playing it slower, so I changed this deck a little bit to be a bit better. But I still like it. I like this deck a lot. I think it's a lot of fun, and water decks were one of my first ever like main competitive decks. When I was younger, I took a water deck to a locals, and I managed to win the Summer Cup with it. I actually have the trophy still, and I used a water deck. It was water deck control using Mobius the Frost Monarch. I used Mother Grizzly, and then I had a toolbox with like Yomi Ship, and we played a lot of cards like Bottomless, Sakuretsu Armor, Mirror Force, and so on and so forth. And it was just a water-based deck, and I used a Giga Gigo, one of my favorite cards of the game, with a legendary Ocean, and it was just a water control, that beatdown style deck, but it was a really, really fun deck. Unfortunately, it's way too slow, but I've always loved water decks. I know water became like a better card in better deck in Duel Links, so I think like cards like Levia, Dragon, Duelist became a lot more powerful in something like Duel Links because the format's so much slower than regular Yu-Gi-Oh! But yeah, I love water decks. I really, really do. I always have an affinity for water. I love swimming, so yeah, swimming is my main way of exercising. So yeah, I love water concept and all the theme of that as well. So remember when Margin was losing this game? Yeah, he has managed to get so many resources, and yikes. Now, we do still have a bit of a wall because we have our token. Our token is not going to get destroyed, and because we have 2 copies of Sea Stealth Attack, even if he tries to protect his monsters using Shurinui Sunsaga's effect to banish a card from the graveyard, he can only do that once per chain. So he'll be able to stop one of them, but he won't be able to stop both of them. And so we're going to have to rely on that to kind of break our opponent's board. But I'm also going to play Phantasm Spiral Battle because I really need to do something to make a comeback here, because his life points are absolutely insane right now. So we're going to destroy that face down card. I really want to get rid of Soul Absorption, but that's kind of a trap as well. You don't really focus on getting rid of Soul Absorption, and don't let him bait you out of destroying the other cards in the field, like or not him, but this decks like this in general, because Soul Absorption doesn't really do too much. If you get rid of their other resources and their ability to banish at all, then you don't have to worry. And he just set Rivalry of the Warlords, and if he put Rivalry of the Warlords in the field, I would have been absolutely screwed, because Rivalry of the Warlords makes it so that you can only have one type of monster on the field. Now, all of his monsters are zombies, so my card, your token is a worm monster, and Megalamasher is a dino monster, and so that's kind of like you would only have to be able to have one of them on the field, so we will just have our worm monster on the field. But also, Zombie World makes it so all cards on the field are zombie. So because my monsters were zombie and I don't have zombie cards, having Rivalry of the Warlords activated would have made it so that I would not have been able to summon anything because I can't summon zombies. So I'm really glad I got rid of that card. Yeah, don't focus on destroying Soul Absorption. It does gain them a lot of life points, but don't be scared by it. Focus on the other cards, and once you break through their board, then you can then it just sits there. You don't have to do anything or worry about it too much. So we're gonna try and keep on attacking his monsters. We're gonna go for Sunsaga. Sunsaga is gonna protect his cards, but you may realize that he doesn't have many zombies in the graveyard left. I think he's got Rivalry of the Warlords, the Shirinari Sword Slash, a card, and maybe one zombie left. So here goes Sunsaga's effect. Off goes Samurai, and the Sea Stealth attack will now destroy it because there's 2 copies of it on the field. Something got banished, so Soul Absorption will activate. I'm just really grateful that he doesn't have multiple copies of Soul Absorption right now, because he'd be getting like 1,000 or 1,500 life points every time, and that would make this even harder to deal with. But fortunately, we're not in that situation. And right now, we're in a really good position, because although he's got so many life points, we've got more resources than our opponent, and he's banished a lot of his cards. So we've managed to really just endure how much pressure he was putting on us, and able to kind of just persevere on the end. And that's because Sea Stealth attack is such a powerful card. It does so much for one card on its own, and the longer it's on the field, the more it's going to pay out its dividend. So it's a really, really good card. I really want to use Card of Demise right now. I really want to activate a card and draw 3. I've got Card of Demise and Into the Void, so this is like perfect to do so. But if I draw 3 spell and trap cards, I'm not going to be able to use them all, because I've only got 1 zone left. So it's kind of a downside to this card here. But that doesn't happen too much. A lot of other decks will be able to get rid of your cards a lot easier. So Card of Demise is good in those situations, and it's good as a comeback card. Even if you just have Card of Demise, or even like Pot of Desires. I know a lot of people don't like playing Desires, but it's good as just a card, like a win more card. So if you're ever in a situation where like you have that card in your hand, you don't want to use it, so you just hold on to it. And then if your opponent manages to start to control the game and start to get an advantage over you, just play it anyway, because what damage can it really do in the situation? So it's not a terrible card, to say the least. So we attack with our card again, and now we've activated a card that's going to really help us out here, Macro Cosmos. You see, while the Shirinui cards all benefit from being banished, and so it's still not too bad for him, he does need to have cards in the graveyard to trigger certain effects. And so by locking off the graveyard with Macro Cosmos, and making so that every card that goes to the graveyard will be banished, it's going to work in our favor, because he's not going to be able to load up the graveyard with resources. For example, that Volcanic card there, Volcanic Counter, needs to go to the graveyard in order to do its effect. And so finally, after a very, very long and back and forth game, I was able to finally get control of the board again. And so my opponent has got some really powerful cards on the field, but not so powerful that they're doing anything right now. But that's okay. When you've got this many life points, you can kind of just sit comfortably and relax for a while, because you're not going to be able to, your opponent's not going to be able to OTK you, so you've got at least a turn or so. But fortunately, we drew into our final copy of Megalomasher X, Megalo Smasher. It's called Megalo Smasher. I've been singing that wrong the whole time. And we normal summon a monster, so we get our last Phantasm Spiral card, so Phantasm Spiral Power, our infinite impermanence for the deck. And then we attack with our cards, so we're going to be able to do 6,000 damage. And a lot of situations, this will do game. This will be like, yep, we've won the game now, but nope, not in this situation at all, definitely not. This game is still going. But we've got a good board. Our board is pretty well set up here. Not a lot to worry about at this point. It would be good if we had some negates, so that if he does something, or does get out like not a lightning storm won't help him right now, but you know what I mean, like a twin twister or something similar to that to break our board. We have ways to recover our board, and we have ways to protect our board. So this is what this deck does, and this is why I wanted to show you this video, because this deck is very good at grinding. He summons out Shirinui Spirit Master, and that would be able to special summon one Shirinui monster from his graveyard or hand, and we're not going to let him get any kind of recovery. We're going to activate Spiral Power, reduce his monster's attack by 1,000, and negate its effect. This card reminds me a lot of the Musketeer card. I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called Domination. Musketeers have a card which do a very similar thing, where they modify attack and defense, but then they negate the effect of a card as well. But I like this more than Musketeers, because Musketeers, I'd have to revisit. It's been a while since I've played them. Yeah, I need to revisit Musketeers. I really want to try that deck again. I did do a deck profile for it, and I know how people popularly play it, but I think I can make it better than that. I really, really do. I think I can play more of like a mid-range version of the deck rather than the OTK deck, because that deck I want to make really good. It's got some really good cards, but it has some really weak parts as well to it. One similar weakness of our deck here and Musketeers is if you don't have your monsters, your cards kind of don't do anything as well. Well, Pacifist can work on its own because it just has to wait for your opponent to activate something, so you'll get a token that way. But if they keep on getting rid of your monsters, then your cards are a little bit weaker, so you do have to be careful about that. It isn't the easiest way to get rid of your monsters, but it can be done. So we go into battle step here. C self attack is going to attack his monster. Both of them will trigger automatically, and that'll pop one card on the field. And he adds Solidarity as well, which is another really cool card. I used to love Solidarity for Amazons and other like type based decks, but it's a really good card, but it's not as good as it used to be. And then he used Spirit Master to pop my card on the field. I didn't even have to let him pop it, to be honest with you. I could have protected it, but I have Terraforming in my hand. I'm really not worried at this point. I can get as many field spell cards as I need to right now, and I can keep them alive and protect them. So we're going to attack, do 2,000 damage with Mega Smasher, and then another 2,000 with the second copy of it. And I think we're in a game-winning situation here. This was a long duel. It's fun to have long duels like this, though. It really, really is. And that's the kind of thing you miss when you play a lot of like modern meta decks. Games finish so quickly, but this was a lot more back and forth, and I love games like this. I love it when you have to really think about what you're doing. I made some mistakes in this video, I definitely did. There were some things along the way which I didn't do correctly, but it helps you learn your deck as well when games go on longer. So this is really, really fun. I really enjoyed this duel here, and it's kind of why I wanted to make a video on it. So we pass to our opponent. He's going to draw one card. If he doesn't get a decent monster this turn, or he needs any monster this turn, we can attack for game. So let's see what he has left in the tank. I've got to be careful as well. This deck almost decked out. I only have 10 cards left, so I realized that this card is quite good at going through his deck without even using Card of Demise, so it's pretty good. I mean, we have things like Pot of Duality, we have Pot of Extravagance, so we do have some other cards in this deck as well that help us dig through our deck. And yeah, our opponent surrenders there. That was a really, really good game. Thank you for playing against me, Margin. That was really, really good. So guys, let me give you the deck profile, and then let's wrap up this very, very long video. So there are two variants of the deck. I'm not going to do the whole breakdown, I'm just going to read them, because you know what the cards do now. Phantasm Spiral Demise. The Demise version of this revolves around Card of Demise. I used to play 3 of this, 3 Into the Void, and 3 Pot of Duality. But instead of doing that, we're relying on using Pot of Extravagance for our draw power as well. As you see, you only play 3 Megalo Smasher. I always call it Megalo Masher. And then 1 D-Fissure. We didn't draw that, but it works at Macrocosmos. Anytime you can play a deck with D-Fissure or Macrocosmos in your deck, you should be laughing because so many decks hate these cards. But you don't worry about your cards going to the graveyard. You don't use your graveyard at all. And so these cards are really, really good. We play 2 Fossil Dig. Unfortunately, you can only play 2. I wish we could play 3. And then we play Pacifis at 3, Pot of Duality. Works really well with Card of Demise as well. You dig the top 3 deck cards of your deck, pick 1 card, but you cannot special summon. But when you're doing things like Card of Demise, who cares? You could special summon anyway. Terraforming, we did have Upstart. Upstart is gone now. Fist of the Unrivaled Tenyi. 3 of these cards to negate, as an Omni Negate to negate the cards that will try and break your board. We have Metaverse, Spiral Battle, Spiral Power, Sea Stealth, Skill Drain, Solemn Judgment. Now, Tenyi can be, when this card is destroyed, if it was set, you can special summon 1 non-effect monster from your extra deck. So, even if your opponent does break your board, you kind of still get a benefit from it. And so that allows you to summon things like Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. And because we're playing Pot of Extravagance, we're having 3 copies of this. And then if that doesn't work, we have 3 copies of Master of Oz. And then we've got 3 copies of Nightmare Cerberus, Phoenix, and Link Spider. Just because there are going to be situations where you need to pop something on the field and you haven't drawn it and you haven't got, say, your Spiral Battle, so you have the option of getting one of these 2 cards here to blow something up on the field, and your deck can make it quite easily. Just use your token to make Link Spider and then use another normal monster, and then you get to one of these. Obviously you don't really want to use them, but it's there. Now, After playing that game, I really didn't like how long it took to get to cards like Skill Drain, Macrocosmos, Defisher, but I did think it was important to have a draw power in the deck. So I still wanted to play Extravagance, but I wanted to have fewer cards that relied on Extravagance or Pot of Duality in the deck, or Card of Demise. So I took a lot of these cards out to do a different engine. So this is Phantasm Spiral Tenyi. The big difference here is we're playing 3 more normal monsters, and this is Mystery Shell Dragon. It's the same stats as Megalo Smasher, but it is not a water monster, it's a dark monster, but we're playing it because it's a worm monster. Now, the reason why we're playing this is so that we can play the card Vessel for the Dragon Cycle. This says send 1 worm monster from your deck to the graveyard. Then, if you control a face-up non-effect monster, you can add from your deck to the graveyard 1 Tenyi monster with a different name from the monster sent to the graveyard. So you can play this, send your normal monster to the graveyard, and then get either Nahata or Vishuda. Nahata is really nice because it can during either player's turn, if one of your normal monsters battles, you can banish this card from your hand or the graveyard, and then that opponent's monster loses 1500 attack or defense until the end of the turn. So you can play your Vessel, send Nahata to the send Mystery Shell and add it to your hand, or send Nahata and add Vishuda from your deck to your hand, and then you've got an interaction for both players' turn. Also, Vishuda we're playing as well, where you can do the same thing, but only during your turn. You can banish this card from your hand to target 1 card your opponent controls and return it to the hand. So it's a monster removal. I might want to play more copies of these two. I still was kind of testing it. You obviously don't want to draw them, you don't really want to brick on them because it's not the main point of the deck, but having the ability to get either choose to search a normal monster or some interruption is really good, as opposed to say rely on just Card of Demise and on some of those big continuous spell cards instead. Now, to get these cards in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, 7, 8, we took out Card of Demise, Into the Void, Upstart Goblin, Macrocosmos, Defisher, Skill Drain, and probably one other card as well I'm forgetting about here. We took out the Unexpected Die. We don't really need Unexpected Die, I didn't even mention that before. Unexpected Die is special summon the normal monster from your deck. You've got so much searching for just 3 monsters that this is kind of redundant, even though it's a really good card. And we took out that too, so that we could fit these in instead. And then we're playing Monster Reborn. There's nothing to stop you playing good extenders in this deck, and I felt that there was the one thing this deck was missing, was that you do want to have a lot of defensive cards, but that's not all you want to have, and starters, so you do want to have some extenders, so Monster Reborn being the best extender in the game. And then, yeah, everything else is the same, really. We do have Fist of the Iron Rival Tenyi as well, so you could still play that card and have your cards here. But other than that, yeah, the deck still works the same way. All you need to be aware of is Mystery Shell Dragon can still trigger Pacifis because it's any normal monster. It doesn't have to be a water monster. But then it doesn't work with Sea Stealth Attack, obviously, because it's not a water monster. So just be aware of that. But I mean, you're gonna, if you have Pacifist on the field, you're gonna get your token anyway, and that fulfills the requirement of Sea Stealth Attack and Pacifist. So that's fine. It still works. So I prefer this version. It's a bit more of a mid-range version. It relies more on searching as opposed to stunning your opponent. But if you want to play the Demise version, you've got this version as well. Guys, thank you as always for watching this video. I said this in the last video, but I'm kind of losing my voice at the moment, so I apologize if I sound croaky or yeah, whatever. But I didn't want to leave without a video today. I'm still trying to do one video every day. And so, yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this profile. I love this deck. I think it's great to play a different deck like this. And it's different, it's unique, and no one else really tries it out. But it can catch a lot of people off guard. Thank you as always for watching this guide, everyone. I'll see you soon. Take care.